I've walked through enough crime scenes to know one thing for sure. Silence can be louder than screams. The absence of something, sound, movement, reaction, can be as damning as blood on the floor. This case proved that to me in a way I still can't shake. It started on a Monday morning in Reston, Virginia. Upper middle-class neighborhood. Identical two-story homes, well-manicured lawns, and a security gate that made everyone feel a little too safe. The 911 call came in at 8:04 a.m., male, mid-30s, unresponsive in his kitchen. No signs of forced entry. The caller was his co-worker, who'd stopped by when the man missed an early meeting and wasn't answering his phone. When I arrived, the scene was still, too still. The victim, Nathan Hale, 36, single, a software engineer, found sitting at the breakfast bar, coffee cup still warm, as if he just paused in the middle of a thought. Only was slumped over, eyes open and dead. No blood, no bruising, no struggle. Poison was my first thought. His phone was on the counter, unlocked. Last text was a weird one. I figured it out. Sent at 1:37 a.m. No reply. No recipient. The message was in the draft folder, unsent. That's not something you just ignore. I walked the perimeter of the house. Windows locked. Back door secure. No signs of break-in. But then something stood out. The curtain in the upstairs guest bedroom was slightly parted, maybe an inch. That wouldn't mean much to most people. But to me, it screamed intent. Someone had watched from there. Inside the guest room, I found nothing unusual at first glance. No prints. No objects out of place. But there was a faint imprint on the carpet, a subtle square, as if a stool or small table had been placed there for a while. Someone had been standing there, watching, waiting. But watching what? I requested security footage from the neighboring houses. Most had the standard doorbell cams. Nathan's system had internal coverage only, but his next-door neighbor, Mrs. Geneva Morrison, had cameras facing her own driveway and yard, which incidentally captured part of Nathan's property too. Mrs. Morrison, 68, retired teacher, quiet type, lived there 12 years. Her house had a perfect line of sight into Nathan's kitchen window. When I knocked on her door, she answered slowly, cautiously. "I didn't hear anything," she said before I even introduced myself. That alone raised a red flag. Most neighbors start with "what happened?" She was defensive from the first second. I asked her if she had seen anything overnight, and she said, "I don't look out the window much anymore. Not since my husband passed." I asked for her footage. She said her cameras had been offline for 2 days. Power outage. She hadn't bothered to reset them. That's when something clicked. I pulled the logs from the security system. No outage reported. Her cameras had been disabled manually from the internal app at 11:04 p.m. the night before. And here's the kicker. The footage prior to that moment, saved in the cloud, showed movement from her backyard gate, a figure in a hoodie slipping quietly between the shrubs toward Nathan's place. A tall figure. Someone who knew how to avoid the doorbell cams. Facial recognition was out of question. The person had their face obscured, but I caught something else. On the left wrist, a medical bracelet. I zoomed in, enhanced. It read, Type 1 diabetes, insulin dependent. That narrowed things down fast. Guess who also had diabetes? Geneva's son, Thomas Morrison. Age 42. Unemployed. Record of minor offenses. Trespassing. A drug possession charge. Some mental health flags. Lived across town, but visited his mother regularly. She told us he wasn't around lately. That was a lie. We found Thomas hiding in her basement, shaking and disoriented. Hypoglycemic shock. He'd missed a dose. In his backpack, Nathan Hale's missing house key, a vial of insulin, and a journal filled with obsessive notes. Notes about surveillance. Notes about Nathan. Turns out Nathan had been in a brief relationship with a woman named Kara, Thomas's ex-girlfriend. She left Thomas years ago, but in his head, she had left him for Nathan. Totally delusional. He had been watching Nathan's house for weeks, convinced he was still seeing her. But Kara had moved out of state last year. She hadn't spoken to either man in months. What really happened that night? Thomas used his mother's access to the neighborhood, disabled her cameras, used a spare key he had stolen from her just in case. He slipped into Nathan's home, poisoned the coffee with an untraceable substance, possibly cyanide, based on toxicology, sat and watched him die. And Mrs. Morrison? She knew. Maybe not all the details, but enough. Enough to turn off the cameras. Enough to lie about looking out the window. Enough to protect the only family she had left. That's what stuck with me most. She'd lived there over a decade. Probably saw everything from that window. Birthdays, barbecues, arguments, loneliness. And the one time she said she didn't look out, that was the one time she needed to. Never trust silence. Never trust a clean crime scene. And never trust a neighbor who says they don't watch. Because sometimes what they see or choose not to see changes everything. I still remember the call. It came in just after 6 a.m., while I was finishing the bitter end of a too-strong coffee in the precinct's break room. Suspicious death, the dispatcher said. Residential neighborhood. Victim is male, late 30s. Possible home invasion. But there's something off. Off was an understatement. The house was in a quiet cul-de-sac in East Bloomington, a middle-class Minnesota suburb where everyone waved each other. Dogs didn't bark after 9, and mailboxes got painted to match the shutters. But there it was, a silver Honda Civic parked on the wrong side of the street, facing traffic. Engine off, windows fogged. That car, that one stupidly parked car, was what started everything. I arrived just as the techs were zipping up the body. Matthew Klein, 38, divorced, CPA, found dead in his hallway, a shallow wound on the back of his head. Not enough blood to suggest a struggle. Looked like he'd fallen, but the back door had been forced. At first glance, it looked like a break-in gone wrong, but nothing had been taken. His watch was on his wrist. Laptop open, wallet untouched. Even the safe in the office was unbothered. It didn't smell right. I walked back outside to that Civic. No plates on the front, as is legal in Minnesota. Rear plate had some mud spray on it, but I could make out most of the numbers. No parking violations or criminal ties. It was registered to a Ronald Hatch, age 49, address 2 towns over. No priors, no traffic violations. A perfect citizen on paper. Still, the car was parked in the wrong direction on a quiet street, in front of a house where a man had just died. That doesn't happen by chance. So I dug. Hatch was hard to track. No cell phone pings in the area. No surveillance cameras caught his face. But one neighbor, a retired teacher who walked her dog every morning at dawn, remembered something. She'd seen a man sitting in the Civic, facing the wrong way, just 2 days before Klein died. Just sitting there, for hours. It was a stakeout. I brought Hatch in for questioning. He denied everything. Said he'd never been to Bloomington. Claimed his car had been stolen that week. Reported it missing, then suddenly found it again in a parking garage near his work. Weird week, he said, chuckling like it was a sitcom. But his story had holes. His fingerprints were on the steering wheel. We lifted a partial palm print from Klein's back door. Partial, but enough. It matched Hatch. When confronted, he shifted in his chair. Said he'd maybe gone to see Klein once to talk. That they had a mutual friend. The friend didn't exist. Then I noticed something in his statement. He used past tense when referring to Klein before we'd officially ruled it a homicide. Matthew was always careful. Hatchet said was, it unraveled from there. Turns out Klein had been dating a woman, Rachel Donner, who, until recently, had been in a long-term relationship with Hatch. She left Hatch 5 months earlier, citing controlling behavior. He didn't take it well. Showed up to her work. Left notes on her car. Classic escalation. What we believe happened is simple and terrifying. Hatch stalked Klein for weeks. Knew his routine. Knew when Rachel wasn't around. That morning, he broke into the back, intending to confront him, maybe to scare him, maybe more. But when Klein spotted him and turned, Hatch struck him once. A blow not meant to kill, but enough to drop him hard onto the hardwood floor. The fall cracked his skull, and just like that, It wasn't a confrontation anymore. It was manslaughter. Hatch panicked. He wiped the doorknob, but forgot the frame. He fled, forgetting the one thing no good predator should forget: the car. He parked the wrong way. That detail stuck with the neighbors. With me, it sparked the doubt that unraveled everything. The wrong angle, the wrong orientation, the wrong assumption that no one would notice. He pled guilty in the end. Voluntary manslaughter. 22 years. But to this day, I tell every rookie the same thing. The smallest detail solves the biggest lie. He followed the victim for weeks. He studied his habits. But in the final moment, he gave himself away with a single mistake. He parked the wrong way. There's a certain kind of silence that settles over a crime scene that doesn't make sense. It's not the shock of bloodshed or the panic of something broken. It's the silence of something absent, a void where something should be. I've learned over the years that the most chilling detail in a scene isn't always what's there. It's what isn't. It was late October when I got called to a suburban home in Wilmington, Delaware, a 2-story colonial on a quiet street. Halloween decorations still hanging limp in the drizzle. The victim was 41-year-old Sarah Langdon, divorced, lived alone, worked remotely. According to neighbors, she kept to herself, but never missed her morning walks or Saturday trips to the local farmer's market. That morning, her co-worker reported her absence from a video meeting. Calls went unanswered. A wellness check led to police discovering her body in the living room, slumped forward in an armchair with a wine glass spilled beside her. No forced entry. No signs of struggle. Just a woman dead in what looked like peaceful stillness, if you ignore the thin, deliberate bruise around her neck. Strangulation. Up close. Personal. Whoever did this knew her. As I stepped into the room, I noticed the framed photos. They were everywhere. Sarah had documented everything: family, friends, vacations, birthdays. The mantel was lined with perfectly symmetrical frames. But my eyes caught something odd on the far wall. There was a clean rectangular outline, dustless, where a picture had clearly hung. Now it was gone. That shouldn't happen in a home like this. People don't remove one photo before murdering someone, unless that one photo mattered. I photographed the space, measured the imprint. It was about 10 by 8 landscape orientation. Looked like it had been hanging for a long time. No nail left behind. No shattered glass. No backup frame tucked behind furniture. Just gone. Sarah's sister, Melanie, came to the house 2 hours later. I asked her if anything looked out of place. No, she said, except there's a picture here of Sarah and her ex. It was the last photo they ever took together, a month before the divorce. She never took it down. Said it reminded her not of the end, but of how much she'd grown. Her ex, I asked, still in the picture? Melanie shook her head. They stopped talking years ago. She was seeing someone new. The boyfriend, Peter Calvin, became our next visit. Friendly, cooperative, nervous. Claimed he and Sarah had dinner the night before and left around 9 p.m. Said she was alive when he left. But he couldn't remember what they talked about. Not even a topic. That struck me. People don't forget the final conversation they had with someone who ends up dead the next day, unless they weren't expecting her to die. We pulled street cam footage. No sign of Peter's car, leaving when he said he did. In fact, the plate registered leaving at midnight, a full 3 hours unaccounted for. When confronted, he folded fast. She said she wanted to call her ex-husband, that she was having second thoughts. I got angry. He claimed he didn't mean to hurt her, claimed he blacked out, that it happened fast. But then I asked the one question that changed everything. Why did you take the photo? His eyes gave it away before his mouth did. I couldn't look at it, he said. The way she smiled in it. It wasn't for me. But here's the thing. He hadn't mentioned what photo was missing. That detail hadn't been released yet. Only someone who had removed it would know it was the one with her ex-husband. He folded, confessed, said he took the photo and tossed it in a dumpster 5 blocks away. We found it cracked but intact. It ended up being the missing piece in court. A single photo. One item missing. In a house full of clutter. That was the thread that unraveled everything. In this job, you learn. People leave clues not just in what they touch, but in what they try to erase. And sometimes, solving a murder is just about noticing what's no longer there. It was supposed to be a quiet Sunday. I was 2 days away from officially retiring as a forensic consultant when I got the call. A home invasion. No sign of forced entry. A young woman dead. The alarm system silent. It was the kind of case that whispers instead of shouts. The kind that scratches at something instinctual. Something you can't quite place until it's too late. The house was in a wealthy cul-de-sac in Fort Collins, Colorado. Pristine. Immaculate lawn. A wraparound porch with seasonal decorations. But inside, it was all wrong. The victim, 27-year-old Lindsay Mathis, was found at the foot of the stairs, neck broken. Paramedics were called by the fiancé, Travis, who said he had just come home from a weekend fishing trip. His story was consistent, emotionally shaken, but something about him was too measured. What got my attention first was the alarm panel. It showed no signs of tampering. The memory log indicated it hadn't been triggered, but more strangely, it hadn't even been armed. The system was off. I asked Travis, who normally armed it. She did, he said, every night, religious about it. The front door showed no tool marks, no scratches on the lock. The deadbolt was locked from the inside. Same for the windows. Nothing broken. No glass. No crowbars. Whoever came and didn't force their way, they were either let in or they had a key. That night, I walked the perimeter alone. Not for evidence. For rhythm. Crime scenes have rhythm. Noise, stillness, sequence. Something was off in the flow of that house. When I stood at the bottom of the stairs where Lindsay fell, I noticed something subtle. A framed picture of the couple on the wall, crooked, tilted just enough to suggest it had been bumped. I didn't touch it, but I asked for prints. Back at the lab, we found partial prints on the picture frame, none matching Lindsay or Travis. A third person. That was the first crack. Then came the time of death estimate. Saturday, between 9 and 11 p.m. Travis's alibi, he was at a cabin 2 hours away. No cell signal. But we pulled traffic camera footage. And there it was, his truck, heading back into town at 7:42 p.m. Saturday. He had lied. I brought him in again. He stuck to the fishing story. I didn't press. I just asked one question. Did Lindsay ever forget to set the alarm? His mouth twitched. He said, no, never. That was his mistake. See, during the tech sweep, we recovered metadata from a smart home system. The alarm was disarmed manually Saturday night from the inside panel at 9:14 p.m., just 10 minutes before Lindsay likely fell. But here's the twist. The system registered her phone, unlocking the door at 9:05. So she was the last one in. That detail started eating at me. What if she forgot to arm it? Or worse, what if someone was already inside? We checked recent app logs. Someone had deleted the camera footage from the cloud, but you can't erase device logins. The deletion happened at 3:17 a.m. Sunday from Travis's phone. Cornered, he finally cracked, but not the way we expected. I didn't kill her, he said. I just found her. According to him, they were having problems. He had come home early, let himself in quietly, and waited to talk. But when he came into the garage unarmed, as he always did, he heard a voice upstairs. A man's voice. He panicked, left through the back, and waited in his truck. When he came back later, she was dead. We checked again. No second male DNA. No signs of a third person in the house. Nothing stolen. No sexual assault. Just one dead woman, one quiet house, and one alarm that never went off. So what happened? A final sweep of the smart thermostat logs gave us the answer. At exactly 8:36 p.m., the temperature changed. Someone adjusted the downstairs thermostat. A fingerprint was found on the screen, belonging to Lindsay. which meant she was alive after Travis had already arrived. He lied again. He wasn't in the truck. He was in the house, waiting. In the confrontation, she must have tried to walk away. Maybe grab her arm. She pulled back, lost balance, fell. The death may have been unintentional, but his cover-up wasn't. Deleting footage, lying to police, wiping fingerprints off the alarm panel, but forgetting the one place he touched out of habit, the picture frame on the wall. It wasn't the fall that convicted him. It was what didn't happen. The alarm didn't sound. And in a house where that system was always armed, silence was evidence. There are details that stick with you, not because of what they are, but because of what they don't make sense of. For me, it was a message, a short one, written on the fogged-up bathroom mirror of a crime scene. 3 words. He was here. Let me rewind. I got the call at 6:12 a.m. A woman named Karen Whitmore, 38, was found dead in her apartment in downtown Milwaukee. Her sister, Elaine, had tried calling all night and finally came over in person when there was no answer. She found Karen in the bathtub, fully clothed, the water cold and the lights off. No blood, no signs of forced entry, no weapons, just silence and a foggy mirror with something no one could explain. I arrived at the scene a little after 7. The apartment was on the 3rd floor, small but clean. The kind of place that tells you its owner was organized, private, and maybe a little lonely. Elaine sat on a couch, hugging her knees, rocking slightly. The paramedics had declared Karen dead about an hour before. Drowning was suspected, but the meat hadn't confirmed it yet. No bruising, no broken bones, no obvious trauma. What struck me wasn't the body or the position she was found in. It was the temperature of the room. The bathroom, despite being sealed off for hours, was strangely warm. The mirror was still fogged, and that's when I saw it. The writing, not finger-written as you'd expect, but partially erased, as if someone had written it hours ago, then steam brought it back. I've seen that before. Old fingerprints or writing reappears when humidity hits a glass surface. It wasn't fresh, but it wasn't that old either. He was here. I took photos, documented everything, but I couldn't stop thinking about who he was. Karen didn't have a boyfriend, no ex-husband. Her social media was bare, her call history clean, but she did have a neighbor, a man named Reggie Malloy, 35, quiet, maintenance guy for the building. The kind of man you forget about until the pipes break. I knocked on his door. No answer. His car was still in the lot. I asked the landlord to open it. What we found wasn't illegal, but it was deeply unsettling. Reggie had a wall covered in newspaper clippings, none violent, none overtly criminal, but all of women, women who'd lived alone, women who had routines, women who had died in what the media called tragic but non-suspicious ways. One of the articles was about Karen's co-worker, who died of carbon monoxide poisoning last year. Another mentioned a woman in Texas, nowhere near Wisconsin. But Reggie had pinned it up anyway, with dates, notes, maps. I ordered a forensic sweep at his apartment. We found nothing that tied him directly to Karen's death. No hair, no fingerprints, no diary entry confessing guilt. Just obsession and meticulous documentation. We pulled security footage from the building. At 10:47 p.m. the night before, Reggie walks past Karen's door. He doesn't knock. He doesn't open anything. He just stands there for 5 full minutes, then leaves. But here's what got me. At 11:03 p.m., Karen leaves her apartment, comes back at 11:11 with takeout, walks in, locks the door, and no one else ever enters. Not Reggie, not a delivery guy, no one. That left 2 possibilities. Either she died alone, and the message was from someone earlier that day, or the killer was already inside. But here's the thing. We found no sign of someone hiding. No hidden space, no tampered locks. The only window was locked from the inside. The chain on the front door still secured. No signs of a break-in and nothing stolen. And then, 3 days later, the coroner called. Karen didn't drown. Her lungs were dry. She had suffered cardiac arrest, possibly triggered by a sudden jolt. Fear, adrenaline, panic. But what caused it? She was healthy. No drugs in her system. No prior history. I went back to the apartment. Something wasn't sitting right. That message, he was here, didn't match the timeline. If no one had entered after 11:11, who was it referring to? That's when I checked the smart speaker in the living room. It wasn't connected to Wi-Fi, but it had local audio history. Only one recording from that night. 11:27 p.m. Karen's voice, who's there? Silence. Then footsteps. Then a whisper. I've always been. The recording cut there. That was enough. I subpoenaed Reggie's computer history. Turns out, he'd been researching gas valves and sedatives. Nothing illegal, but enough to suggest planning. Enough to suggest he didn't need to enter Karen's apartment. Just access to the vents. A little tampering. Something to make her feel disoriented, afraid, to panic. And in her fear, maybe she believed someone was inside. Maybe she ran to the bathroom, locked the door, turned on the hot water to calm down. And maybe she saw something written long ago by Reggie when he'd once fixed her leaky faucet. A message she never noticed. A ghost sentence revived by steam. He was here. Reggie was never charged. There was no physical evidence. No fingerprints. No confession. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I know that sometimes the most terrifying crime is the one that looks like nothing at all.